Hello everyone, welcome back to Being ACCA, and today we have with us Marty, who comes with an exceptional experience of teaching SBL. And today we have him in our expert session 5 to discuss what is SBL all about. So welcome and thank you for doing this with us.
And thank you for inviting me.
Okay, so this session is basically divided into three segments. Firstly, Tushita will ask you some of the questions that are asked by our audience, and then we'll move forward with some of the questions that we want to ask you, and then we have like a fun round with you.
Sure.
Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started with the first segment. So, these are some general questions asked by our audience. So, the first question is, before starting with SBL, do you think, SBL is a lengthy and a difficult paper? So, students, that is what students think about it. So, what's your take on it?
I think it's not as bad as you think. I mean, when I saw the Kaplan manual, right? And the Kaplan manual is like 1,000 pages long, and you're like, wow, that is like a lot of pages, right? And you're thinking, oh my goodness, am I going to have to like absorb 1,000 pages to pass this exam? So it seems initially quite intimidating. SBL is like, oh my goodness, it's like so much. But actually, although there is theories, it's not an exam where you're going to go in depth. You've got to have really like almost a superficial level of theories. You're not going to get deep into the theories. The thing that I want to emphasize to the students always is, and I think a lot of students don't get this, is that SBL is supposed to be practical, right? It's supposed to be a simulation of things you're going to do in a business. So it's when you're writing a report, they ask you to write a report to the board of directors. You're supposed to write that report in a kind of business way, not like an exam essay way. And a lot of students get that wrong. They write in like an exam essay, how they've done in the past.
Yeah.
But what it's supposed to be is like a simulation. So if you have work experience, it will massively help you in SBL if you've got any work experience, because a lot of the writing of the report stuff will be like second nature to you, but it's things you do in your job. And with the theories, the book has got a lot of theories, but actually what you need is kind of a higher level. You will never be asked to describe the theory, criticize the theory. The idea of the theories in the book, and they're all there, is that you use the theories to structure your answer, but you're not like quoting the theory at all. So I believe if you've got really good work experience, or if you're a person that reads the business news on a regular basis, it's almost as important in SBL to do that as it is to read the manual. I mean, it's good to read the manual or to get a summarized version of it, but having that business knowledge is actually really important for you. Yeah. So it's not. Don't be intimidated by it. It's not as bad as it looks initially when you get the Kaplan manual. You want to start to cry, right? Usually, but it's not that bad. Honestly, it's much easier than that.
Totally agree with you on that. So the next question that we have is, a lot of students go for SBL with self-study. So how should the approach be? Do they start with study text? Do they solve the kits? How should a self-study student approach the paper?
I think there's three elements that you need to take into account when you're doing your ACCA exam, especially for SBL. One is knowledge. So you've got to have the knowledge first. So I'm not quite sure that whether the book is the best place to start. It's probably if you can get some summarized version of that, it's a much better place to start because it's just like so intimidating. So knowledge, number one. And then the most tricky thing about SBL and the thing that students struggle with most is application. So it's all about the application in the examination. So application means taking that knowledge and applying it in the examination, right? So a lot of students, and the examiner's report says this quite clearly, that students just describe theories, right?
Yeah.
If you describe theory, you're definitely going to get 0 marks. It's not going to give you anything in the examination. So what you've got to do is, as early as possible, get into the past paper questions. So it's like, I think the starting point is to learn the knowledge, like acquire the knowledge first is your first step,
Okay.
but then do a question on the knowledge, applying that knowledge, and look at how the answer comes out, the examiner's answer. And I think another thing, a little tip for you if you are self-studying, is if you can look at the examiner's reports. It's also very helpful.
Okay.
Examiner's reports basically say what students did wrong. So if you can get into the examiner's reports, it's really saying, oh yeah, I just made that mistake when I did my answer, and try and do the answer without looking at the answer. It drives me crazy that students, like, they see a question, they straight away look at the back of the book for the answer.
Yeah.
Right? That's really kind of not a good way to learn. It's much better just to take 10 minutes, and SBL is really all about planning.
Yeah.
So take 10 minutes and do your answer plan, and then look at the answer. And if you've made mistakes, it's all about what we say about the SBL exam is bad dress rehearsal, good performance,
Yeah.
right? So when you're practicing questions and making mistakes, the making of the mistakes is part of the learning process, right? So if you do your answer and the examiner said, the weak student did this, yeah, oh my goodness, am I a weak student? It shouldn't get you downhearted. It's like a learning point. So get into the examiner's reports early. And, that's something I do when I'm teaching is I always, especially on revision. So that's the second element. I said there's 3 elements. Everything comes in 3s. So the third element is really getting into the exam technique part.
Okay.
So you can have a very well-prepared student who has got very weak exam technique who will fail, and you've got this very marginal student. And I'm sure when you're doing your ACCA exam, you look around your class and go, well, this person's not really very clever, and they pass and I fail. I cannot believe it, right? They're not very clever. But what they are probably clever at is they've got really good exam technique, and the exam technique is kind of everything. So to summarize, start with the knowledge, learn the basic theories. Again, don't worry about going into super depth, just have a broad knowledge of them. Second part is practice the questions, application. And third thing is get into the exam technique.
Right. Okay. So the last question for this segment is, how do you think, since you've been teaching SBL for so many years, how do you think that SBL is different from the other papers of ACCA and other papers specifically in the professional level of ACCA?
I think everything at the professional level is quite different. They've all kind of got their own challenges. And like, I know a lot of students, they get through SBL and SBR, and then they get onto the optional paper, and it's like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
it's like I'm facing the hardest task at the end. You should give me the easy one to finish off with, and it's often quite difficult. So they're all kind of challenging. They all require dedication and commitment. I mean, the thing about SBL is the new thing is the pre-seen case study.
Yeah.
So we do have a pre-seen case study for the first time. It actually helps you a bit. Last time, like 4-hour exam is quite a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So having that pre-seen case study gives it a little bit of a head up. I think it will make it slightly better for most students, especially if English is not their first language. So having that is a big difference. I mean, all the other bodies have been doing it for a long time, and ACCA is kind of late to the game on that. I did tell them, hey, it should be a pre-seen, you should give it in advance, and they didn't agree, but eventually they've caved in now. Like some exams, it's all different. I think it's very, the challenging thing, I think, one thing I want to emphasize to your students is you need to get onto that practice platform early.
Yeah.
Right? Get onto that test reach, because I tell you now, don't start with test reach on the day of the exam.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not that easy to use. I don't know whether you've found it, but I tell you, for me, it's not easy to use. You need to get into practicing the test reach
Yeah.
is one thing you need to practice on. So, when you're doing your exams or mock exams, get on the test reach. So it's challenging. It's not like a word processor and you open it up. It's like it's not easy to use. And
Yeah.
if you're doing the exam at home, I strongly advise you getting multiple screens to do that. And the other tip for you being ACCA is most people are not very good at typing,
Yeah.
including me, right? I'm absolutely awful at typing, right?
Yeah.
If you can, and then this is going to sound crazy, right? But let me just go with it, right? Just go with it. If you if you do an online typing course to improve your typing speed and accuracy,
Okay.
that could give you an extra 10 minutes in the examination.
Okay.
Because it's just that little, like when Formula One team, they're always looking for the extra edge, the extra like
Yeah.
half a second faster, 1/10 of a second faster. If
Yeah.
you can type faster, if I said to you, I'm going to give you 10 minutes extra in your exam, you're going, oh, Marty, what is the secret to getting 10 minutes extra in the exam? You'd be like all over it, right? But actually, if you actually do a little bit of a typing course, if your typing is weak, and not everybody's good at some people are good at typing on their phone, they're super fast on their phone,
Yeah.
get to a keyboard and they're totally screwed, right?
Yeah.
So I feel that that's one little tip that you might want to consider is doing an online typing course just to get your speed up, and it could potentially give you 10 more minutes in the exam of things to write, which is, one statistic, I don't know whether you know this, and this statistic is gonna blow your mind, right? So the majority of people that pass the examination, they get 50, 51, 52, 53, and 54. And the majority of people who fail the examination,
49.
they get 46, 47,
Yeah.
48, and 49. So if you take the 44 to, to 54, that's 90% of all students,
Yeah.
right? Mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
So most students in the exam, they either just pass or they just fail, like on the margin. So anything you can do that will get you like 1 mark, it really is like massive for you, right? It's a massive thing for you to get over the line. So you've got to use every advantage you've got, and that's why it's important under exam technique to look at the professional marks. Excuse me. Did you know that statistic? Did you know that?
No, we didn't
Now
know.
you know, right? This is like
Yeah.
mind blowing. You put it on your Instagram tomorrow, right? This is the headline for the podcast, right?
Yeah. So thank you for the amazing tip that you just told us about the time management.
Yeah. Do you know that? You see, it's just such a simple thing, but I don't know what
Yeah.
you meant. Maybe in India, everybody's a really good typist, so they don't need it. But I don't think they are personally, right?
Yeah. Okay, so let's move forward with the next segment. That is some of the questions that we want to personally ask you.
Sure.
So the first question is: we know that you have been into teaching since so long, and
Yes.
you would be checking so many answer scripts every quarter. So what is that one thing that you look into the answer script that maybe that answer script stands out from the other students' answer scripts? So something which students can do extra in there while writing their answers to impress the marker maybe.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, right? Because it's like it should be a two-way, learning should be a two-way process, right?
Yeah.
So if you're in the SBL exam and you've got a 10-mark question, how many paragraphs do you think you need to write?
I think five small ones.
5 small ones. Okay. What do you
Yeah.
think? Yeah. Yeah. So it is 5, right? It is 5. So each paragraph is what you've got to think about is each paragraph is potentially worth 2 marks.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how they mark the examination, right? So when they mark the exam, your paragraph, and it's a good idea to guide the examiner by using paragraph headings, right?
Yeah.
So an excellent student, they will do two things in each paragraph, right? They'll explain their point, right?
Yeah.
Explain their point. They will say, da da da, corporate. They'll make their point, which it might be about corporate governance is weak in this organization.
Yeah.
So they'll explain their point, but actually a lot of people, that's all they do. But if you want to really, what you want to be aiming for and targeting
Okay.
is the ultimate goal, the gold standard you're looking for is a 2-mark paragraph.
Yeah.
So it's actually what you write in that second. So a short paragraph is not, it should be like thinking about this, right? 3 sentences to explain your point. And then example, right? Example means link back to the case, right? So get the example. Corporate governance is weak in this organization. There is a lack of effective oversight on the board. We can see this example,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then the last part, the thing that I always talk about, the most important thing is the say why part. So the say why gives you the say why that is relevant, right? Especially in relation to the verb used in the case, right? So if you say why that is relevant, you say why. Say why is the most important part, right? Because that's and if you get into a paragraph where a student explains the point, they've done a really relevant and saying, I'm concerned, and again, you've got to do it in a professional way. I'm concerned at this company that there is a lack of effective internal control as demonstrated by blah, blah, blah. Why is that lack of internal control important? This could lead to, last sentence, this could lead to a significant health and safety risk in the organization. Boom.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at marking, you've got to think that what you've got to do. So then it's a little tip for you, everybody, right? You've got to create that ticking zone, right? So think about the marker. The marker is going to look at your paragraph, right? He's going to look at, he or she is going to look at that first paragraph. Okay, did they make the point clearly? Yes.
Yeah.
So you've got to get them into that second paragraph. Did they explain the point and say why? So they've got to make that judgment. Have they written enough to put, because there's no half marks. Have they written enough to make it a strong explanation? So a really excellent candidate, what they're doing all the way through is they are hitting those 2-mark paragraphs all the way through. And they don't over answer it, right? They don't write down 10 paragraphs and then waste time. They're really good at timing. So a little tip for you is the exam's going to be 3 hours, 15 minutes now. Yeah. So you probably need to spend at least 45 minutes of that is planning. Planning your answer is very important in the examination. So you've got to then divide the number of marks by the number of minutes. Yeah. And then that will give you an indication of how long you've got in the examination, how long you've got left in the exam. So when you look at a question, you want to think about 1.5 minutes. Yeah. So don't think about it as marks, think about it as minutes. Okay. And you write according to the minutes and try and make as many points as you can in the minutes available. Okay. Because so many people run out of time, even in 4-hour exam. Yeah. A lot of people run out of time. So think about your minutes and not your marks is the key to it.
Okay, so I think that was a brilliant tip for all our students. So the next question is that, again, since you have been teaching SBL from so long, how has SBL exam evolved now? Like, how is it different from maybe it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
It's not fundamentally different. The questions are quite similar. There's certain things in the pilot papers maybe a little bit out of date, but once you get past the initial pilot papers, the original ones, they're not quite really like the exam now. But most of it is, it's not changed that much, really.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty familiar to me. I'm not seeing any big change uh, in the last like 3 or 4 years of the examinations. Pretty standard, the questions, and actually a lot of repetition.
Okay.
A lot of
Yeah.
repeated questions with different scenarios. Basically, there's only so much they can ask you about, right?
True.
So, um, yeah, it does repeat. So the reason why you need to practice past paper questions is they do repeat. There'll be a question on, even the phrasing is quite similar. So it'll be asking about assess the risks in this case.
Yeah.
So it's important to do that. So it's not really changed fundamentally, apart from if you're going to practice your exam, I'd stay clear of the initial pilot papers. They're not really that indicative of what the exam's like now. Um, but yeah, apart from that, they haven't changed that much, apart from the pre-seen case study coming in now, which is the big change. But I think the exam is pretty similar in style to what it has been before.
Okay. So just a follow-up question that you just mentioned about the pre-seen case study, which ACC has now released. So many students have seen they're very confused. They're scared actually of the pre-seen material, and how should they actually approach it? How should they read it and approach the case study? So what would be your advice to those students who are giving their exam this Tuesday?
Well, it's probably a bit late now, but you can put it out on your LinkedIn that I'm doing a free seminar tomorrow where I review the pre-seen examination.
Okay.
I will send you if you want to link it in. It's only got 100 seats, so it's pretty nearly sold out. So it's free. I say sold out. It's not. I'm not making any money out of it, but
Yeah, sure.
it's just to help you out. But okay, so the first thing is, a lot of people think that they can spot exactly what direction the exam is going in, and we can maybe spot a little bit
Yeah.
about what's going to come up in the examination. So what I've been doing, and again, I will share this with you if you want to put it on your Insta. It's very helpful, right? So first of all, you've got to consider
Okay.
the industry, which is a budget airline, right? It's a budget airline industry. So what I did in my blog in the last 5 days, and it's going to still go on until the day of the exam.
Okay.
I've written, it's going to be about 6 or 7, 8 articles,
Okay.
which will be very helpful, which are focused on um, Porter's 5 forces in the budget airline industry, big data in the budget airline industry. What else have I got? Some integrated reporting in the budget airline industry. So they're not specifically related to the case, the pre-seen case,
Yeah.
but what they relate to is the industry in general. So those ideas are what SBL's about ideas, about generating lots of ideas. So I've written like all these case studies, and I'm going to continue to write. There's a few more to come. There's one tomorrow, which will be the Pestel analysis of the budget. So all these things are potential questions that might come up in the examination. The one today I wrote is about big data.
Okay.
So these are all like really popular topics in the exam. So one thing I would say to students is when you're reading it, a good approach would be to do a SWOT. SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So a good part, because you don't know what the question is going to be, just go through and identify the strengths and weaknesses, which are internal, and the opportunities and threats, which are external. So that's a really good way of analyzing the case because you don't know what to do, what it's about. So start with SWOT. Second thing is what you can do is potentially try to think about the industry as a whole. So get some background of the industry as a whole. So if you really want to do that, again, read my blog articles. There's all the background of the budget airline industry, lots of relevant examples, which again, you won't be able to use it directly. It's not an academic exercise in the exam, but the ideas are what you want to take with you. So there's always going to be things in the exam which you can't spot, right? So there's nothing in the case which indicates talent management, for example. But they might just in the exam, there's always going to be things in the exam which are completely unspottable and they come out of nowhere. So you've got to try and anticipate that as well, right? So don't think that you're going to be able to totally spot the exam, because they write it in such a way that there's definitely going to be 45 to 50% which you cannot spot. So you've got to have a knowledge of the syllabus to do that. So I would advise them to do the SWOT. I would advise them to like keep on reading it, keep on reading it, and keep on reading it. Read it again and again and again, because the more you can be familiar with it, the quicker it's going to be in the examination to assimilate that with the extra knowledge you've got on the day of the examination. So don't just read it once, read it a few times and really make sure you know everything included in that. And then, that's going to make a massive difference for your examination. But SWOT is the way to go because we don't know the questions. I would read my blog, which has got all the background information for you, which is going to have the industry examples in there for you. And yeah, so that's what I would do. I would do those two things. Read my blog. Sorry to promote my blog, but I think it's really would be massively helpful if you're in it. And yeah. So those two things. So SWOT is really a good analysis because you can't do anything else, right? Because you know what the question is going to be. But yeah.
Okay, so thank you so much for the two things that you told the SBL students to do. Now we move on to the fun section, and there are some light-hearted questions that we want to ask you. So how do you like to spend your time when you are not teaching students or when you're not working?
So I have this thing where I don't know whether you know that some people are afraid to fly. Some people have fear of flying. I have a fear of not flying. So what I want to do is when I'm not teaching students, I want to travel to different places in the world. So my fear is not traveling. So I want to travel. So I've been to many countries in the world, and that's the interesting thing for me to relax is to fly and visit new places in the world.
I share that with you then. Yeah, okay. So the next thing that we would like to ask you is, have you ever thought of teaching any other paper apart from SBL?
I used to teach in the old syllabus. I used to teach P1 and P3, which is quite similar to SBL, right? So P1 and P3 is almost the ACCA will tell you it's not a combination of P1 and P3, but actually it is a real combination. Don't tell them, right? But actually it's a real combination of P1 and P3. I used to teach P1. I used to teach a bit of like an audit paper under SEMA. So I really teach the wordy subjects. So I'm okay to teach the wordy subjects, but I don't want to get into those numbers. Although I'm a qualified accountant, I don't want to get into those consolidation and accounting standards. My goodness, it's like I leave that to other people like Tom to get involved in. People like Tom Clendon, they get very excited. They just read accounting standards every night before they go to sleep at night. So, this is you've got to be a total geek to teach these papers. And I'm more interested in the business side of it.
Okay. So are you an ACCA qualified member yourself?
I'm a SEMA. So when I graduated, I went on a graduate training course in the UK isn't it really bad now, but it's Big Pharma, so pharmaceutical company, which is now like everybody sort of like looks down on Big Pharma as being really bad, but it's actually a really good training course. So they gave you a choice of SEMA or ACCA. So actually, I did the SEMA exams, but in those days, SEMA was actually it kind of blows students' minds when I tell them that SEMA exam you've got to do 4 papers every time. You cannot do less than 4. You've got to do 4 papers. So you've got to come in Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, 3-hour exams over. So you're doing 4 papers in 2 days. You can't do individual exams. And if you fail any one of the 4 papers, you fail everything. You've got to pass all 4 papers in one go. You cannot fail anything. So it's like, so when you do your final exam, you're doing strategy, financial management, advanced accounting, advanced audit, all in 2 days. So you've got to now it's so easy to pass now, right? You can just do one paper at a time, take it easy, right? It's not like the old days for the old people when they really made it very tough. So I think now it's more easy for women as well. I mean, if you're taking a career break, you're coming back into it.
Yeah.
I think it's very, very flexible system that allows people to do it at their own pace, which I think is a really good thing. All the in the past, it's like it was so stressful to do 4 exams in 2 days. But I think now ACCA has done a really good job of that flexibility and allows people to like take a career break or take some time out and then come back into it and I think your chance of passing is much higher if you're doing individual exams. It should really be able to focus and concentrate.
Definitely, yeah. So this is similar to how we have it in India also. So the Chartered Accountancy Body in India, the local body, has the similar pattern still. Even in the present day, you have to appear for all 4 or 6 exams together, and if you fail one, you fail them all.
I heard it's incredible. I've heard it's incredibly hard.
Yeah, it's
I've been
very
hearing
hard.
it's incredibly hard. Yeah, I heard that. But now you've got ACCA, right? We can get that global qualification. Hey,
Yeah.
that's what we want, right?
True. So now I have some this or that questions for you. Try
Okay.
to be as quick as you can.
As quick as I
Teaching or
can. Okay.
studying?
Say that again.
Teaching or studying?
Oh, teaching. Teaching is bliss, man. Teaching is joy. If the best job in the world, right, is to be a teacher, teaching is bliss, right? Don't forget it.
True. ACCA Study Hub or the BPP Kaplan kits?
I'm going to support ACCA in this seminar. Like, just absolutely, yeah. So I used to work for Kaplan, of course. Up until a few weeks ago, I was actually working for Kaplan as a director of Kaplan in Singapore. So, but now, I think ACCA Study Hub has got some great resources in there, and like a lot of that is coming straight from the ACCA. I don't know whether they've implemented it yet, but they're supposed to be doing study kits as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know, has that come out now?
We still have study kits at the moment. The study texts as well as kits. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you prefer taking live classes or marking answer scripts?
Oh, live classes every day of the week.
Nobody.
Marking.
We've had
Marking
5. You're the
terrible.
5th expert now, and everyone has said live sessions. Nobody likes to check the answer scripts.
I think, so marking is like the thing most lecturers least like to do, right? However, from the student perspective, it is the best way for them to learn by marking it properly. So when I do mark, although it's like not my favorite thing to do, it is from the best way for students to learn. If you can give really detailed feedback to the students, they can really like personally learn how to do it. So although I don't like doing it, I do it because it's like that's what they need. They need it. But I prefer to do a lecture any day of the week. Yeah, marking is like it's great for the students. It's like the lecture. It's like it can be because you may have like 100 scripts. You've got to mark. It's literally 3-4 days just solidly doing it, and it's just like incessant. So yeah. Teaching is bliss. I keep telling you guys, teaching is bliss. Teaching is bliss. This is the best job you've got in the world if you're an ACCA teacher.
Okay, so the last question in this segment is: have you watched any Bollywood movie?
Does Slumdog Millionaire count as a Bollywood movie? Not really, right?
Not really. I won't say that.
I mean, I was actually, I went to this Indian restaurant last week called the Punjab Kitchen, and they had Bollywood on, and it's just like song and dance show. So I don't think I've seen one in its entirety, I would say, but it's very colorful. I mean, they've got a lot of dancing going on, right? They love a good dance, and a group dancing is pretty good. So there's a lot of that going on. The colors are great. So I don't think I've been able to watch one in its entirety, but I'm a big fan of Slumdog Millionaire, and the book is also very good. If you read the
Yeah.
book of the movie, which what's it? I can't remember what the book is called, but the book is really good. It's all about India as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say that. What about you? Have you watched any Japanese movies?
Japanese, not really.
Oh, really? Okay. So yeah. Australian movies,
um, I do watch more of Hollywood. Yeah, I watch.
French movies,
Sorry.
French,
No French.
Spanish.
Spanish a little bit. The ones that come on Netflix with the translations available.
Yeah, Money Heist. Money
Yeah,
Heist is a
yeah.
really,
Money
really, really
Heist
good.
really went
Money Heist is
popular in
fantastic.
India, and
Yeah,
so did this British show Bridgerton. That also gained a lot of popularity.
Bridgerton. Yeah, India would love that. People in India would love Bridgerton. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can go on a Bridgerton day and have high tea at these kind of places. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I don't think I've seen one all the way through. Yeah, not for me. But it incredibly is. I mean, that's a real case study there about Bollywood, how they can keep on churning it out. I mean, it's really interesting how they can um, still make money on it, because they're quite similar, right? I mean, a lot of them are quite. They look quite similar to my untrained eye, but they still pump them out at a rate, right? They still People still go to see them, and they don't seem to have changed very much as well in terms of, you talked about changing SBL. Those Bollywood, it seems like they're kind of, I wouldn't say old fashioned, but they're formulaic, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know there's a lot of rustling of trees and things like that when they start to kiss and things like that. So yeah, it's like almost like quite an old fashioned kind of theme of them, but they haven't really. They updated some things, but there's some things that are like pretty much the same as they were 60 years ago, right? Or 50 years ago, those movies. But yeah, I
Okay, so before we let you go, we have just a couple of more questions for you.
sure.
We have heard about the shortage of CPAs in the US at the moment. Since you're based there, I'm asking you this. So, do you think that ACCAs can fill this gap?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, when I was working overseas, they although they don't have, like, I went to Australia and they didn't have the qualification, but they do recognize it as being a good qualification to have. So I think what is more important is, if you've got that, it's a global qualification. So I think about ACCA is, if ever I meet anybody who's got an ACCA, and if I want to employ them, I just know they're of good quality, right? And you've shown a lot of dedication and persistence to get through that examination, which is a really good trait as well. So I think what people are looking for now is skills. Skills is what people want, and the problem now is there's too many degrees,
Yeah.
and it's very, like, MBAs. There's too many degrees. There's too many MBAs, and it's very difficult to know what the quality is. Right? It's very difficult to know. So if you've got a degree in accountancy, I don't really know if it's good or not. I can't really tell
Yeah.
whether it's a really good and how you did it. But if I know you've got ACCA, that the pass rates are still 50%,
Yeah.
and at the optional paper, the pass rates are now like
30.
31%, right? At those optional papers. So for me, for the students, it's a nightmare, right? But for me, I think it's an indication of quality. So it's like the thing about the ACCA exam is they never dilute the quality of it. It's always quality. So I think going forward is they can always point towards their pass rates and say, look, we never dilute the quality. Like some of the qualifications,
Yeah.
like the Singapore Chartered Accountant qualification, they've got like 80% pass rates,
Yeah.
80%, 85% in some cases, right? So ACCA has got 30, which seems like a bad thing, but actually if they can maintain the quality of the qualification by doing so, and you know that if you're going to employ an ACCA person, that they are of good quality, it carries forward into any market. And there are a lot of Indian people here in America. There's lots of them, right, already here. So, although the visa does take a long time to get if you're Indian, to get your PR is a long journey. I think it's 10 years to get your PR here. So, but they definitely get the skill set, and anything is possible, right? Anything is possible if you want to do something. You can really must believe you can do it, and like you cannot be passive. You got to use every contact and take every step. So when I went to Australia, I didn't have a job. I just knocked on doors until somebody gave me some work, and then I got a better job. And then you've got to get out there. You've got to be proactive. Nobody's going to. And I think one thing that's missing a bit in the world now is personal face-to-face contact is much better than doing something on Zoom if you can. I mean, it's not always possible, right? But if you can meet people face-to-face, it just is a lot better for creating that bond with people, which you don't get if you are on if you do it. It's not quite the same. So try to go face to face whenever possible, and have a plan. Have a plan of how to do that. So, if do you get the show 90 Day Fiancé? Do you have that show? No. Oh well, it's about people who travel to the US to get married to Americans. So it's got a lot of different. It's a massive show over here. So they just many different foreign people who come to the USA to get married. So so don't limit your ambition. Everything is possible, right? Everything is possible. I mean, there's that guy running for president now. Is of Indian heritage, right? I think one of the Republican candidates, his parents are from India. So it's not, and he's doing quite well. So it's not beyond the bounds of possibility we could have an Indian president of the USA, and the vice president is actually, I believe, partially Indian as well.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is partially Indian. So my goodness, like the world is your oyster, right? You really, if you believe you can do it, but you've got to be proactive and take steps to do so, right? Everything is possible. If you want to do it, take the steps to do it. There are things you can do. I mean, one of my students 10 years ago just applied to do an MBA scholarship in USA. Won the scholarship. That's $150,000 scholarship to an MBA in the USA. And they gave us $700 a month stipend allowance, right? So they're paying her to be there. And subsequently got a job in the USA. So it might be for you here at being ACCA, that your journey is not over yet. There's could be possibilities for you to take the next step. And that's the starting point, right? So think about this. Education is not just a one-off. I mean, 7 years ago, I did a master's, right? Yeah. So it's just like, if I can do a master's, anybody can do it, right? So it wasn't an MBA, but these are things that are possibilities, especially if you're young and you're doing your own podcast and you've got things to write on your resume. This is all in your favor now,
Rightly said, I think. So, lastly, before we let you go, we would like you to, you know, tell our students who are giving their September exam next Tuesday, and most of them are very scared. So, we would just like to let them know some, tips or tricks or some advice or some motivation for the exam. So, yeah.
So the main trick I would say to you is time management is very important for you, right? Don't run out of time. Think about the planning stage and think about the writing stage. If you want to learn about the industry and get some good tips on ideas, because SBL is like asking for ideas, and you've got to make your answer relevant. If you asked about risk management and risk controls, you've got to make your answer relevant to that industry. If you asked about big data, how can this, one question might be, how can we use big data? So big data, you've got to make your answer relevant. Look at what other companies are doing with big data in the airline industry. So luckily, I've written all these answers for you.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll be linked in this Instagram bio at the
definitely.
end. So read my blogs. Honestly, each one, they're not long. Each one takes 5 minutes to read, and there's probably 7 or 8 of them by the time you get to the exam.
Okay.
Read my blog, and it should be a massive help for you in the examination in terms of generating those ideas. Don't panic, and make sure that you hit the right formats. So the one place where students lose marks is if they don't hit the right format, they get the wrong format, they lose
Yeah.
professional marks, half the professional marks. So learn what the formats are, right? Learn the difference between the two formats.
Okay. So thank you so much for having this session with us. And